হচ্ছে নাকি এটা একটু দেখো তো একটু তোমার ইয়েতে। দেখো তো একটু। আমরা মাইক্রোফোন টেস্টিং করতেছি বেসিক্যালি বিফোর দি মিটিং। সো পাবলিক নাই, তুমি আমাকে ইয়ে দাও। এটা পাবলিকই করে না, এটা পাবলিকই দেখা যাচ্ছে। সো this is good. দেখা যাচ্ছে, আমার কথা শোনা যাচ্ছে নাকি একটু দেখো। একের ভিতরে 4 হয়ে গেল কিভাবে? Display. হ্যালো, হ্যালো, হ্যালো। আমার কথা শোনা যায়? কথা শোনা যায়? দেখো তো একটু। নাবিয়া, দেখো তো আমার কথা শোনা যায় নাকি? হ্যালো, হ্যালো, মাইক্রোফোন টেস্টিং 1 2 3 4 5। কোনো লাইভ শো করতেছে না কেন? ফেসবুক থেকে? এটা আমি তো দেখতেছি এখানে। What do you mean? রিফ্রেশ করো পেজ। এই যে লাইভ তো এখানে দেখাচ্ছে তো। মিউট মার্জানা, তুমি লাইনে আছো? Mhm. Navia, I'm gonna start. So, hi guys. My name is Tamzid. I am from Kompass, and today we have special guest Tiffney Johnson. She's an ex-visa officer and an immigration attorney as well. So we are just waiting for her. She should be joining shortly. So we will be asking her questions about like the student visas, the new rules and stuff like that. And then we will also ask about like what pathways are there for international students. So we are waiting for her. She should be joining within a few minutes. আসসালামু আলাইকুম রোহিত ভাই, কথা শোনা যাচ্ছে?
মাতার সাথে আপনার পিছনে ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড কালারটা ভালো ম্যাচ করছে।
মিলে ম্যাচ হয়ে গেছে না একদম? ভেরি গুড। সমস্যা নাই, this is casual, this is here, we are here to help students. So this is Mr. Roisuddin, he is from Pacific States University. We have hi Tiffney, how are you doing?
Hi.
Awesome. So Tiffney is I'm glad that she's here right now. She's an ex-visa officer and also an attorney. We are here with Roisuddin as well. He's from Pacific States University. And my name is Tamzid. I'm from Kompass. So Tiffany, we are here to to provide information to our students in Bangladesh. And also, like, since it's in English, I hope everyone gets benefited by that, because there are a lot of confusions, that what's going on about student visas. So if you can enlighten us, like, the rule changes, like what happened. I know it's something new, so yes, if you can just tell us about the students, what's going on.
Sure. So, I mean, I think a lot of students have been following this issue very closely. And that is that students will no longer be admitted for a duration of status, meaning that whatever program you are entering to take part in, the time you will be allowed to stay in the United States is going to be limited to the duration of that program, rather than for the entirety of the time you are maintaining student status. So the biggest impact this is going to have is for students when they graduate having to apply actually for an extension to receive OPT, or be leaving the United States and readmitted for a longer period of time with a new I-20 to complete their OPT. So it's going to be, that's going to be at another step of, I would say, bureaucracy on top of the student visa process. And it will also have some effect on current students who are not beginning their OPT in this coming next year. There's going to be sort of this grace period for people starting OPT that are, graduating this year or starting their OPT in the spring of 2027 if they apply by the cutoff. But after that, the new rules will also apply to students who are here in the United States before they start their OPT.
Awesome. So, I've heard that, like, if they start OPT before March 30th, they don't have to do OB-539 anymore. Is that right?
They'll have to file it by the deadline. I don't know the exact date, if it was March 15th or 30th, but there's a specific date in March. They have to apply by that date in order to be grandfathered in under the current duration of status rules.
Right. So you said about the grandfathered in, right? So grandfathered in, like, people who already have the visa and they are already studying, right? So how's that work? Like, could you explain a little bit more?
Well, the way that the new policy was written is still a bit vague as to how it is logistically going to be applied to students who are here right now. I read through it a few times, and it looks like they still will technically be in the duration of status admission category, but that they will still need that separate extension for OPT, and that it's not clear though if they change programs how this new rule is going to be applied. If they decide to go to grad school, or they transfer to another school or something like that, how this rule is actually going to be applied to those students. It is not very specific.
Yeah, that's what I exactly heard, because everyone is confused. All the DSOs that I have talked to, they don't know. The only thing they can say that you can only do, like, once you get the visa, it's for bachelors. You cannot change university for a year, which is good. Universities are supporting it. And also for the master's program, if someone comes, they cannot change the program at all. And the university cannot be changed at all.
There appear to be some ways you can apply for an exception to this rule, but again, none of this is how the logistics of how any of that works has not yet been made totally transparent. So I'm sure that DSOs are hoping that some kind of training and clarification is coming down the pipeline before that September 15th date, when they actually have to start advising students of what to do.
Okay, so now, like, the rule change, right? So after September 15th, the universities do not have the control over that transfer anymore, right? So the students have to go through I-539.
So that also is not exactly clear as to whether an I-539 will be needed if a transfer is within the rules, meaning the person is past that first freshman deadline. Or because right now, even if you have, there's rules with flexibilities of you being able to leave and come back with your same visa and the updated I-20, you can do certain things. So it's still quite vague as to exactly how this is going to be enforced, what is going to require an I-539, and what can still be done via just an updated I-20, or what can be updated just by leaving and re-entering. It's still quite vague. So I really am not comfortable giving specific actionable advice other than on the points that have been made very clear, and that is that after September 15th, if you come into the US with your F1 visa, you will no longer be admitted for duration of status. Even if you're an existing student now, you leave and come back, it's going to be tied to your 30 days of after the end of your program date, and that the grace period has been shortened to 30 days.
30 days, exactly. So,
Can I
right.
add something?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So as my understanding about for this issue, so we also have discussing with the Homeland Security who have representative for university. So they also not confirm what we do, but they're saying that we have the seminar 31st for all the DSO. They can give the guideline of from 31st of August, and maybe we can understanding of the 31st of August. And as I know, for undergraduate students who have completed the first year, they can transfer any university, and they can also change the major any as per their need. But the most of the for restriction for the master's student, they cannot transfer any school, any change, also major. And also, as I understanding for this new rules, that they can check maybe for the service status, like for example, like the undergraduate student, they're checking for I-20 for expired date. As per I-20, maybe they can issue for new I-94. So let's say like for Roy should be undergraduate student, and he completed 2 years, and he need to maybe another 2 years for the until 2028. So new rules may be coming for like the I-94. They updated as for maybe for maybe expired date until 2028.
Yeah, and
maybe
the sort of guidance for this is going to be on a lot of the website where you can usually look for these very nitpicky kind of rules are in the study in the states, the where they have the guidance that is for DSOs, and it's the most specific student guidance. And so far, the only guidance there are these general sort of Q&A FAQs that are very much in line with the USCIS policy, and still that there are a lot of specifics that DSOs do not know exactly how they're going to be administered in practice. And so I think that once we get past that September 15th date and DSOs start having these really specific situations that may not fit into under those FAQs, they're not answered. Hopefully we will see the fleshing out of more of the details of how these new policies are actually going to be applied. And, there's always a possibility that once they are actually in practice, maybe some of these are going to get reined back a bit because it's going to be so burdensome. On DSOs are already saying this is going to be a major change for them. They're going to need more staff to help administer these policies, and that it's going to cost universities a lot of money to help administer these policies for their students. So, as these things develop, there may even be further changes to the way the policy is actually implemented in practice.
All right. So I have a question, simple question. A lot of students are thinking like, that, they will only get the 4-year visa and that's it. They have to come back to their home country. So that's a misconception. They can extend, they can go up higher. So if you can talk about that.
They can extend, they will have to extend for their OPT also. And they can extend into a master's program. It has to be a progressively, a progressive program. You can't do a lateral program via an extension. At least that's what the guidance states. So that will be, a succession of bachelor's, master's, PhD, or some type of post-grad, program, something like that. But as there's still also, you can always consular process if you want to do another master's degree or something like that. You would still have the option to consular process a student visa. But for now, they say the extensions are limited to progressive programs. And in general, for all student visas, it's generally sort of the best case scenario is that you are going to a progressive program anyway. That's that presents the best type of scenario for your visa to be issued without further explanation. Not that you can't do it, but it's just the more ideal situation.
Right. So suppose like I studied economics, right? And then I wanted to. I'm not an international student, but I studied economics. Now I want to study MBA again.
Right. And that may require consular, under the current policy, it looks like that will require consular processing. But maybe that will change, because that to me is it's sort of a complementary degree, not necessarily, even though it's not a progressive degree, it's still a complementary degree to that program. And it could be required for a PhD you want to do, or whatever, for whatever reason makes you more marketable in your home country. So that is something can usually be explained in the consular interview quite easily, but may not be eligible for the extension of status.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions, right? So I know that we have limited time. If you could tell me like how much time do we have, then
yeah, another 15 or 20 minutes is fine.
Okay, sure. So I will move forward quickly. And can you tell me, a lot of people ask, how does a visa officer makes a decision about, how do you make a decision in 1 minute, 2 minutes, sometimes 30 seconds? You just don't even ask any question and just reject. A lot of Bangladeshi students go like, I have prepared a whole year, and then they didn't even ask me any questions.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's very egregious to not ask any questions. I've never seen an interview like that where no one asked a question.
They would ask a question, one question probably, yeah.
In fact, the best practices in interviewing are always what I would say is called, I would teach my officers, people, not papers, because the main advantage of having a consular officer in country is their familiarity with local norms, customs, their education systems, because what is normal in one country is not, normal in another country. And you become very familiar with, the people who are coming in for student visas and the types of situations they present. And the main things that make a student a good candidate for a student visa is really a logical situation. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. You have to show the ability to pay. That's very, very important for a student visa. And so if you are let's say you're a young person applying for, a bachelor's degree program, that's $40,000 a year in the United States. And that's probably best case scenario.
Yeah.
Who is paying for that for you? Right. If it's your parents, that makes sense. If it's a friend, that doesn't make a lot of sense. because that's a lot of money for an undergraduate degree.
Even for Americans.
Even for anyone. You know,
anyone.
my friend is not paying for my undergraduate degree at
Right.
$40,000. There's no family friend that's paying for it, you know. So, you know, and in some cultures, it's very common for an uncle who maybe they don't have any children to pay for their nephews and nieces to go to school. That can be very common in culturally. And so it has to make sense. When people get to the graduate level, again, it has to make sense based on, you know, if someone is, you know, they've had their bachelor's degree, they've been in the workforce, now they're going to decided to go abroad for their graduate degree. You know, they may be having to spend their own money to do it, and they've saved, and, you know, maybe their parents are helping them some, maybe their spouse has helped them some, all kinds of things. So it really depends on sort of the stage of life of the student and whether the situation they're presenting makes sense. How did they choose the school? I know this is like a stock question that you know you are going to be asked most likely. Why did you choose this school? But I will tell you as an officer that there are many students who cannot explain this in an interview. They tell you what they think you want to hear as to why they chose this school, when the truth is usually the most convincing thing. As an officer, I'll ask, how many schools did you apply to? Because if you're a legitimate student, you're not just applying to one school and seeing what they give you. You're applying to schools and seeing what makes the best, you know, sense for you financially, with the program, the cost of living. There's many factors that go into choosing a school. So when I ask a student that question, you know, I would expect an answer that makes sense to me as to why someone chose a specific school over other schools that they might have been accepted to.
Exactly. So, okay, I want to make it quick. So when I went for the visa interview in 2005, the visa officer asked me, why did you choose this university? I said, 3 of my cousins went to this university. I didn't even, I told my dad, hey, I want to go to USA. My dad said, yeah, my dad said, okay. So my dad and my uncle in Wisconsin, they helped me with the admissions. My dad helped me with the visa processing. I just went to the interview, right?
Yep.
And that was the only question they asked. And they asked me like, okay, did you pay the savers? I said, yes. Says, okay, congratulations. You can pick up your passport. I was still surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You're explaining it. You're making my point for me. You knew why you chose that school because you knew other people who had gone there. And that's a really common reason. That's a really common reason for choosing a school. Some people, their older brother or sister already went through that program. So they know where they're going to live. They've maybe have visited them before. Their parents might have gone to the graduation ceremony, whatever. They're familiar with that school. That's one of another main reason people choose a school is familiarity with the place, the school, or other people they know have had a positive experience there.
Right. So, you said that the CS student usually apply to like multiple universities. Important. Being a good communicator is also important. So you can convey your message to the visa officers, because a lot of people do not understand don't know what to say. Basically, they are very afraid. We are Bangladeshi people are usually very afraid. Trust me. They come to you and they're shaking. So even if they have the whole thing, they get it all messed up sometimes. So I was like that, and we as a culture, culturally we are a little shy. I don't know if you know that. So, but I tell my students, just you have to be courageous, or just don't be scared. They're just speaking English. That's it. They're just human like us. So
Again, I actually interviewed a lot of people from Bangladesh when I was in Australia. There's a lot of students studying there who go on to graduate programs maybe in the United States after they've studied their English, and they're in Australia. They may go to a program in the United States for their studies. And even there, you learn these cultural norms of how do people behave when they're nervous. And so officers do take that into account. They do take that into account with people who are coming in for those, especially those kind of visas, student visas, work visas.
Right. They're little kids.
They know there's just elements of nerves there, for sure.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next thing is like, students are staying, as you know that, after you live in a country, you fall in love with the country, right? You get used to it. It's about any country. You probably fell in love with Australia when you stayed there, right?
I definitely did.
So, after they study here, they want to see a future here. So what are their pathways? They are H-1B, they have employment-based EB-1 to EB-5, especially EB-2, EB-3, right? So, so what are their options? Like, what can they do? Like,
Well, of course, the most common route is OPT to an H-1B. Now, of course, there's a lottery for the H-1B that adds an element of uncertainty to whether you can get an H-1B. And when you are considering your course of study, depending on your own goals for your career, there are definitely certain career paths with more opportunity for H-1B employment than others. And especially without the lottery. So if you already know that you want to enter a certain medical field or something like that, you may have more opportunities for what they call the cap exempt H-1B than in other career paths. So it is something to think about. If you're just a blank slate and you're kind of like, well, I'm kind of interested in this, I'm kind of interested in that, it is something to consider if that's really important to you. Of course, there's other kinds of deficit fields where it is also easier to get H-1B sponsorship. Another new development with H-1Bs is the quasi-self-sponsored H-1B. And that is for people who may have a little bit of capital that they can do a startup company as an H-1B. And it's a new field of H-1B. I've been able to do a few this year. And so it's something also to think about if you're entrepreneurial and you may have access to a little bit of capital when you graduate, that an H-1B, although you would still need the lottery, that may be another option if you can't find a sponsor for an H-1B.
So it's all lottery, but if they go towards, I know that if you apply to a non-profit organization, if you get hired and if they sponsor you, there's no lottery.
Well, it's not just a non-profit. It has to be a non-profit that is affiliated with a university. So, that is a very wide range of types of jobs, though, because I have clients that are teachers in elementary schools that have an affiliation with a university for teacher training. And that counts for the H-1B cap exempt if they have the right kind of contract with the university. Same with many hospitals. It doesn't necessarily just apply to medical jobs. It can also apply to non-medical jobs in a hospital that has that affiliation with the university or as a research institution. So just a nonprofit is not what qualifies as cap exempt. They have to meet either the university affiliation criteria or a few other types of criteria related to research organizations, and that there's some other specific criteria. So it's not just being a nonprofit. That is only one of the criteria.
Okay, so three more questions. So we have, we can cover everything. So EB-2 NIW, a lot of people, EB-1 is like an Einstein visa. You have to be an Einstein. We do not have enough Einsteins in this world, so we are not going to talk about it. EB-2 skilled and EB-2 NIW, and EB-3 skilled and EB-3 unskilled.
Yes.
Like, just briefly, if you can give us an idea.
For sure. Yeah. So I will say, I do get a lot of sort of inquiries for people who do believe they sort of meet the criteria for the EB-1. But as you mentioned, it is not just the criteria, right? It's much beyond that. And so if you are, for example, a recent PhD graduate, it's very unlikely you're going to meet that EB-1 criteria just because you are a PhD, you just got your PhD, and you published a little bit of research while you were doing your PhD. So that in and of itself usually does not qualify one for the EB-1. Neither does it qualify someone for an EB-2 NIW usually either. And so the EB-2 NIW, a really important part of that is the endeavor that you're going to have, and that it will have national impact. And a lot of people don't understand that aspect of it. So if you're looking for a more sure way, the sponsored EB-2, EB-3, skilled, professional, or unskilled are sort of the more, I would say, conservative ways to plan your immigration path. And if your employer is very happy with you and you're on that H-1B, the most typical path is, for a professional would be H-1B to an EB-3 sponsored professional visa, because you can continue working on that H-1B indefinitely while that is percolating, as long as it's filed for in the right time period. Now, you mentioned the EB-3 unskilled, and a lot of people who come to university in the US might not have that on their radar as a possibility. But given that, it is actually very difficult to find employer sponsors. It is, even for people who are very accomplished in their field, many employers have never sponsored anyone before, and they are hesitant to put that out there as something they're willing to do. And that is why I'm definitely seeing many more people that I have consultations with who are turning to an EB-3 unskilled as an option, even if they have received a bachelor's degree in the United States or abroad, or a higher degree. And the reason is because they're willing to make this commitment to an unskilled job, because a lot of these unskilled jobs still have a lot of room for advancement within a company. Even, for example, a fast food chain, let's say, a fast food restaurant, a franchisor that owns 10 McDonald's. Within the franchise, there are jobs that are actually quite high paying that you may be able to advance to with your business degree or your accounting degree, anything like that. So people are looking at these kind of alternative methods. And the other thing is that if you are married, your spouse can work in whatever field they want to. So you may take that unskilled job, your family's able to obtain the green card, and your spouse can work in whatever field, their field of expertise from day one. So it makes sense even for some families to do this.
Okay, so it's a reliable pathway. It's a legal pathway towards. It's a step that you can take if you are really interested. Then that's like a reliable pathway, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to choosing someone has to find an employer, right? Since you said it's very hard to find and sponsor.
It is very challenging. Mm-hmm.
Right, and it's it's a petitioner. There's a petitioner behind you. That's your employer, right? So it's just like you're family based. There's a petitioner for you who's an American citizen, and having a petitioner is important. That makes your case stronger. Like,
yes, and that is sort of for someone who goes through an agency that matches employers with immigrant people that want to immigrate on an EB-3 unskilled, let's say, sometimes so that allows for a buffer a lot of times, because an individual employer, let's say you're able to even find that employer that might want to sponsor you, if they're not familiar with the process, I see this often. The employer is not prepared that this is a process that takes 3, 4, 5 years. They sort of lose interest in the process halfway through, and the person is left kind of stuck without a valid job offer at the end of the process. And that's a key part of the process, is that at the end of the process, at the time of the interview, you need a renewed job offer issued within the last
Right.
30 days. And that is where, if you have a reputable recruiter you're working with, they have vetted these employers to know they're financially stable. They understand the process of the EB-3 Unskilled, and they will usually have a fallback plan if the worst thing happens and that employer, let's say, has a bankruptcy or something devastating happens. In that, if you have that approved I-140, you can use that priority date for a new process. Now, I mean, of course, no one wants that to happen, but sometimes these things happen. And so it's a question to ask when you're working with a recruiter as what is their approach. If that happens, what will they do for you?
Right.
Also, working with a recruiter that is transparent in that you should know your priority date. I have consultations with people all the time, unfortunately, that say, you know what, I think I got scammed because I paid some money and I was told there was this job. And I asked, like, well, did you have a job interview? Did you ever talk to the employer? Do you, did you ever see a job offer? And you'd be surprised. Nothing.
Right.
So
right.
These are things you want to look at when you're working with a recruiter and asking, are they vetting the employers, and do they also have access to legal advice if there's a complication in your case?
Okay, so like, that some companies do interviews, like, recruiter, and some companies don't. Like, because, yeah, I'm not gonna say specifically which one, but there are employers. But, so yeah, if you could tell me, like, there are companies in the US, right? And there are companies in Bangladesh, everywhere. So there are reputable companies in the US. So if you could tell, like, if there's anything, like there are some companies that, what do you think? Like you can suggest, or people can look into?
Well, there's definitely companies. Not all those companies are in the United States. So I have, I've worked with companies abroad that do recruiting in their home countries for US employers. So that's not uncommon. However, what you want to know is, do they have access to an attorney in the United States if a client has an issue? And also another sort of, I'd say, red flag is this recruiter asking you questions about your background? Like, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever, what is your immigration history in the United States? So that that recruiter is also looking at your qualifications, and you don't get to the end of the process and find out that you don't qualify. So those are things, you should be looking for when you're dealing with a recruiter, that they have these lasting, strong relationships with employers. They're vetting you and they're vetting their employers, and also that there's transparency as to what's happening in your process.
Awesome. That's good. Great. So last thing is, I want the Bangladeshi students to, I want to give them some encouragement that, USA is still the greatest country in the world. It's still a land of opportunity, and it's a great country to study and explore. So say something about our Bangladeshi students.
Yeah, well, I would say, in general, legitimate students should not be deterred by these new policies, because while it may make it more, a little more difficult of a process, a little more stressful of a process, ultimately, legitimate students should still be able to obtain their student visas, continue their studies, do OPT, all of those things, although there's a little more uncertainty and a little more paperwork involved. So I also would stay off of Reddit and any of those forums, because you're only going to see the worst of the worst there. And people aren't always honest about their situations when they talk about their immigration problems. So I would not be looking to that for advice as to whether or not you should decide to study in the United States.
Right. Of course.
Just, stick to reputable sources of information.
Reputed information, exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffney Johnson. I have been working with her, and she helped me out a lot with the problems like students faces with legal problems with the immigration. And yeah, I love working with her, and thank you so much for being here. And we would love to do that again.
Thanks a lot, Tamzidul. It was nice being here. Thank you.
Nice meeting you too. Thank you so much. Take care.
right.
Have a wonderful day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Yep.